Hello and welcome to Torsion's overview of the upcoming Mordred community multiplayer for Europa Universalis 4. Wanted to just take a minute and walk through the country seedings and share some thoughts about potential early conflicts and alliances that may be forming already. So, if you're not familiar, we have our friend Charles123 over in Hormuz, a small Middle Eastern country, more of a trade power from a national idea perspective. Um, Previous games, Charles has played Inca and Livonian Order. Definitely not one to sleep on. Limited exposure from a PvP perspective in those games, but did participate in large wars late in the game, both as Inca and Livonia Order. Other players around him, we have Val over in the Mamelukes. We have Darkfighter over in the Timurids. We've got a couple players down in India, I believe, with Gujarat, Blue Kiwi, previous Ajam player, and Bahmanis, Commander Faceless. So there is some early expansion available. Gulf of Aden is an incredibly powerful trade node. Obviously, India quite rich, so expect Charles to expand quickly through the miners near him. Maybe work out something with the Timurids, maybe the Mamelukes. I don't really see him working closely with the Ottomans, as they're a little bit distant. Um, might be some contention with Gujarat. Gujarat being another trade semi-focused power in the India region. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic here. So once again, to review, we've got Charles123 in Hormuz. We've got Val over in the Mamelukes, Darkfighter in the Timurids, Blue Kiwi in Gujarat, and Commander Faceless in Bahmanis. Val obviously played Pirate England in Florence before. Extremely diplomatic, thinks outside the box, so it'll be interesting to see what she comes up with. Darkfighter, I believe, was Muscovy into Russia 2 games ago, but haven't had much experience with him. He's a bit of a wild card. Blue Kiwi in Gujarat is interesting. Our Ajam player last game formed the Timurids, played extremely well in his player versus player wars against Yuan. I'd expect him to be the more aggressive player in the India region. He is pinched between Timurids, maybe looking to form the Mughals, and Bahmanis expansion. Bahmanis obviously starts out a little stronger, but Commander Faceless is more of a passive player, very friendly, willing to work with someone. So I could definitely see Bahmanis taking the Deccan and Coromandel nodes, whereas Gujarat will take Gujarat Doab and then potentially Bengal. But once we start getting into Bengal, we've got an Ayutthaya player, as well as quite a few others in Southeast Asia. So this is actually probably one of the more interesting regions to keep an eye on, especially early game. Moving on, we'll actually switch over into the Southeast Asia region. We have Helsin playing Madas or Madias, something like that. Interesting nation. Heavy naval focus. So all of their traditions and ambitions are related to naval ideas, morale of navies, naval leader shock, ship durability. So 3 of their national ideas. They also have a dev cost reduction. Really strong nation here in the Philippines. Other players around him, we have a Brunei, we have a Tidoro, we have an Ayutthaya, and then in the north we have an Oirat and a Xinjiao. Um, it'll be interesting to see where Helsin chooses to expand. Obviously, expect him to consume the Philippines quickly and early, but from there, is he going to make a jump to the New World? Is he going to look to expand north into Japan? Or is he going after the rich Malacca node, leveraging his naval supremacy to jump between the islands? Obviously, Helsin played Muscovy into Russia in the last game, and prior to that, the Ottomans, known for being a more aggressive player. Should be interesting to see. The others in the Southeast Asia area Gosis on Brunei, and Vices on Ayutthaya, and who's on Teodora? Let's take a look here. Powerful Sadist. So I know Vices has been competing in the casual multiplayer. Also played a little bit with him in a smaller group of gentlemen. The others I do not have any exposure to. So quite a few wild cards here in the Southeast Asia area. Will be interesting to watch. Now we're actually going to take a shift over into Europe. Holland, player. England, player. Castile, player. Portugal, player. Morocco, player. Switzerland, player. Genoa, player. France, Burgundy, not players. So it leaves quite a bit of a power vacuum. On Holland, we have Calakinesis, new player. England, we have Mindboy, experienced player, has played Delhi in the last broadcasted stream. In the casual, he actually played Holland, and in the last competitive smaller one, he played Holland, and in the casual, he's playing Brabant. So quite a bit of experience in the English Channel area. Expect him to look to hold on to his English holdings against France potentially, which typically does not happen when you have a player France. He also did work well with the Castile player previously in the last multiplayer, so could see an English-Spanish alliance early, which would be the dominant power in Western Europe. Others in this area, Portugal, being played by our good friend Aretos, previous Milan player, previous Venice player, played Georgia in a smaller competitive MP. Quite a bit of experience. Expect him to go heavily colonial. He does have a strong diplomatic game, has kept long-term relations with his allies. I'd expect him and Gabs to come to an understanding. And I have a sneaking suspicion here that our friend over in Morocco may be left out in the cold. Dominic Laudot. But Tunis is open, so Morocco could give up the Sevilla land and then look to be more conciliatory and move towards the Tunis node, and then obviously south into Timbuktu. Timbuktu area, we have a Songhai player, but no others, so Holy Victor may come to an agreement with our Morocco player, splitting this area. It is very valuable. Songhai will be able to expand quite a bit before Morocco completes the mission to get into Timbuktu. It's going to be interesting. If Morocco is unable to expand into Timbuktu because Songhai has already established themselves, I'd expect Morocco to be squeezed out. Songhai, Holy Victor, as I mentioned, previous Papal State player, previous Sweden player, previous Denmark player. Actually won Mordred's Europe Thunderdome mission-focused MP 2 seasons ago on the broadcast. Strong player. Look for him to do well in this lightly populated area. As we shift back to Europe, the only player in Italy will be Genoa. This is interesting. It's a new player to Mordred's multiplayers, but typically you've got 1, 2, 3 players in the Italy area, so incredibly valuable territory here from a development perspective. Some of the highest in the game to start. Milan, 20, Florence, 28. Just tons of development throughout this region. Look for Genoa to be pretty powerful.
Hello, Dovshin.
Hey, Mindboy, how's it going?
Great Wall of the Fire.
Yeah, I'm doing a recording, giving a little political overview for the upcoming multiplayer. Any thoughts you'd like to share?
I was here for a long time
Yeah, I
letting
saw
you
that.
speak, and then he comes in.
So we're joined by Mindboy now, our England player. As I mentioned,
Oh, hello.
potential for him to work with Gabs. Mindboy, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, there have been talks between the Irish and the English.
Hostile negotiations or friendly?
A mix of both.
Okay, that'll be interesting. We do have a Munster player. It is our good friend Zale. Um, Zale chooses smaller nations frequently, but is able to expand rapidly. Um, I wonder if Zale might actually be making a play to the New World. He'd be well positioned in the Irish Isles to form either Canada, USA, or Texas. Um, Plenty of opportunity over there, so that'll be interesting.
From what I've heard, there is something colonial but not going away.
Okay.
But I won't tell too much about that.
Any chance we may have a Irish pirate?
Oh no, I don't hope so,
Yeah.
at
So
least.
in the Grand Lan, the Paradox hosted multiplayer in a castle in Poland. The three Irish players that were seeded all went pirate. So it's a pretty interesting strat, and Irish miners are well positioned to do it early game. So let's see if Zale goes pirate this time. Um,
If he
move,
goes pirate, he needs to force the Royal Navy.
Moving
That's
on
one.
from Ireland, we're going to shift over to Val and the Mamelukes. Mamelukes, one of the great powers, starting in the game. Val, as I mentioned before, played Pirate England, played a strong Florence, is playing a very interesting Ashikaga. She loves to think outside the box, but being positioned right next to Jamie, probably the strongest and most experienced player on the server, is going to be interesting. Historically, there's plenty of conflict between the Mamluks and the Ottomans. The Ottomans start off with a really strong tradition, 5 discipline, which makes them extremely difficult to beat early game, and then they can quickly take the guns of urban so that they're able to siege extremely quickly. Makes them very hard to fight, even in a multi-front war. And with Hungary, Austria, Venice all open, the Ottomans is going to be able to focus against potential threats in the Middle East. One Middle Easterner I did not mention, Just Dutch, over in Georgia. Going to be interesting. First time I've seen this player on the server, so can't provide a ton of background, but Jamie is a little bit boxed in from traditional expansion routes. Switching back to Val, obviously starting in the Alexandria node with expansion into Ethiopia and the Gulf of Aden. Ethiopia having a few gold mines, incredibly important early game, and the Gulf of Aden being a rich trade node. Some pretty good trade goods down here as well. So expect Val to expand south quickly and look for her to establish diplomatic alliances to combat Jamie. Who else do we have? We touched briefly on Mine Boy. Gabs, obviously, in Castile. Very strong player. Look for a strong Spain without France to counter them. Sir Striker over in Sweden. Eastern Europe and the Middle East. Probably the two most crowded areas from a player perspective. We have a Poland. We have a Lithuania. We have a Muscovy. We have a Sweden. We have a Brandenburg. We have a Bohemia. Not much room to expand. Sweden obviously can take down Denmark, Norway, try to eat up parts of Novgorod, maybe Livonian Order. Expect Muscovy to be extremely aggressive. Rarely played Bavaria in a smaller competitive multiplayer, proved himself extremely competent. So some strong players in this area. Lithuania, I fear may be the odd man out, being surrounded by the Ottomans, Poland, Sweden, and Muscovy. Little expansion option. They start relatively poor. It's going to be interesting to see if Master Giles, I believe he's changed his name now actually, will be able to survive, maybe diplomatically work his way out, but will be an interesting region to watch for sure. Pivoting back to Sweden, Sir Striker played Poland in the previous broadcasted EU game. Strong player. Look for him to get independence early and form a strong Sweden. Legit player over in Brandenburg, experienced multiplayer participant, a little bit crowded here in the HRE this season. In this particular region with Bohemia, Brandenburg, and Brunswick and Lübeck, but still plenty of land. Might be difficult for him to form Prussia this season, as there's a Poland and Lithuania and Sweden and Muscovy player, which you don't typically have that many players, so there may be some competition for the land required to form Prussia, but that remains to be seen. We touch base on others. Just want to highlight Ottomans. Jamie is a competent player. He's got a little bit of land to grow into with few players surrounding him, the only one being Mamelukes initially. Will be interesting to see how aggressive he is early, or if he chooses to just slowly grow at a measured rate and take on players as they form against him. But my 2 areas to watch, day 1, Middle East, Eastern Europe. Get ready. Expect some blue flames. Shifting now, we have myself, Torsion, playing Oirat, Klemf playing Jinzhou. Klemf, as you may remember, was our Bahmanis into Hindustan player. I played Morocco into Andalusia. Worked closely with Klemf throughout that game. We'll see what tensions come. I know Jinzhou obviously goes Manchu, Oirat Yuan. You're competing over Ming. It'll be interesting to see if there's some tension there.
May I bring in something?
Yes.
As the last Delhi player, I know that Clef is a really good player and he's very loyal to his allies. So if he got an alliance, I think he will stay loyal. But we will see what happens.
Yep. Switching back to Europe, while there is only one Italian, we do have a Swiss player. Switzerland's actually probably best positioned this game. He's a new player to the server, I believe, Robert C. There's very few players around him. The area just to the north of him, the Bavarian lands, in the Rhineland trade node and the Vienne trade node, both incredibly rich farmlands. So great opportunity to see an extremely strong Switzerland taking advantage of some of the changes to mercenaries that came in 1.3. Bonus discipline, bonus manpower, infantry combat ability, mercenary maintenance decrease. We could see an extremely strong Switzerland this game. I'd be interested to see how they're able to expand quickly early with so few players around them and then consolidate. And with that, I'm actually going to wrap it up here. Feel free to tune back in next week as I review what happened on Saturday. Thank you.